I want to be not disability not only acknowledged but spotlighted. And um I want you to know, remember, although I may be leading this workshop, I am you. I've been doing this for 42 years. Some of you have been doing it longer. I am you. And that puts mind body solutions in a really unique position in relationship to yoga, adaptive yoga, and disability. Like, we know this from the inside out. So this is part of why I want to try this new type of programming that actually speaks more directly to this. And it's because we know the experience firsthand. This is, there's a lot of adaptive yoga out there. There's not a ton that's actually founded and predicated on the practice of someone that lives with a disability, right? And lives with the experience of it. So this is part of, I want you to embrace the fact that we're equals in this gathering, right? And I want to try to, it's hard to be interactive too much, but it's part of what I want to do. So someone needs to be muted there. I'm not sure who that is. So I want to start now more formally, right? And so if you don't know the song, the name of this workshop, this is one of a series of 5 workshops, is called Who Says I Can't Be Free? And it's a song by John Mayer called Who Says, and I'm not going to go into all the lyrics of it because it's the opening line, by the way, is Who Says I Can't Be Stoned? So the line I want to go off of, I'm not advocating for drug use here. The line I want to go off is from Who Says I Can't Be Free from all the things that I used to be? Rewrite my history. Who says I can't be free? Now, one of the things that I believe is that all of us that live, even as we age and we become less abled, right? I actually think that we absorb messages from our culture, right? That we internalize without even knowing it. And so there is a little bit in this group and this community. It's okay if we're a little bit at times irreverent for what we encounter in the wider culture. And we'll keep that under control to some extent, but it's like, there is an energy to this. It's like, wait, who says I can't be in my body? Who says my life is damaged because I'm not as able? Right. And that is a big moment in my yoga practice. It's in waking where I want to do yoga. I'm thinking I'm like starting adaptive yoga and going for it, right? And I want to do yoga, and I met my yoga teacher, and she gives me this thing. I'm ready to do hard poses because I'm still under the influence of this cultural meme of overcoming disability, of using my will to actually succeed. And by the way, as we'll talk we're going to be interviewing someone today, one of the students from Ireland. So it's like, you need to be willful, by the way, to live with disability. It takes an overwhelming amount of endurance to actually, there is no break from disability, by the way, as you know, right? And so, but I was like ready to do the yoga, and she asked me to shake hands with my feet as one of my first things, right? So backing up here, so I'm being asked to like grab my feet and do different things with my feet. And I'm telling you, I put it off for 5 years. It turned out that was an incredibly difficult thing to do psychologically. And as I started to teach yoga, so I've been teaching adaptive yoga since 1998 or 97, I'm not sure. And I started to see the same pattern in my students. I started to see a very much of a difficulty of them inhabiting their whole body, and especially being connected to their feet. And as I started to watch what I thought was just my experience, right? I started to watch this being, why is that? Why is it that it's harder to inhabit your whole body when you live with a disability? What was driving the yogi in me to want to get to the real yoga, where I could exert my will against my body, right? What happened? And I think a lot of those messages are coming from outside of us. And one of the fundamental things that I try to achieve in everything I do at Mind Body Solutions, and I have all different lines I try to say about it, but I want people to inhabit the body they have. not the one that they think they're supposed to have, not the way they're supposed to be. The foundation of any yoga practice has to be truthfulness, right? And by the way, if you've read Waking, within a year and a half, I break my femur bone because that boy wouldn't shake hands with his feet. That young man wouldn't shake hands with his feet. He decided to push. And I thought I was coming to yoga and becoming free from what I was told by doctors and everyone in the culture around me, right? I thought I was starting, and I thought, oh, I'm doing yoga, I'm doing something different. No, I wasn't free. And the strands were invisible. And I was still working against a conception of me. And the good thing for a lot of you that come into adaptive yoga a little bit older, you're much wiser than I was at that time, right? That you know that pushing that hard, but it's like, it's a deep message. And so that's part of where, like, wait. And that's what I want this group to be able to pursue, is actually, what are the messages while we're doing yoga, while we're doing other stuff? What are the things that we can identify? And the secret experiences of all the cubby holes I've been put into, all the times I've been thrown around like a sack of potatoes, all the times I've been excluded, all the times I've had to accept, right? Because at the end of the day, this culture can only look about this far into disability. And the overcoming story of disability, the one that makes me not stay in my feet, is actually to allow the greater culture to stay asleep. If they can see me as an inspiration, they don't have to deal with how difficult my life is. And when I say inspiration, I mean all of us, right? That's what they do to disability. And I have such a great example of it in my life. I don't know if any of you know, some of you know, I was when Waking came out, I was in People magazine. And they interviewed me for 3 straight hours. And it seemed like a good interview. And then when it came out in People magazine, it was 2 paragraphs, and they never mentioned my book, and they never mentioned my mind body solutions, us right here in this room. They never mentioned it and they called it Om-mazing, because they took the most extreme picture they could find of me in a yoga pose, and they put it in at that as the photo, because they knew the reader of People magazine wants to be this deep, and they want to look at the picture and go, God, if he can do that, just think of what I could do with my life. So we fall into a pattern in response to that. And when you're a kid, it's harder to see it, of like thinking that that's what I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be the triathlete. I'm supposed to be this. I need to overcome. And guess what the casualty of the overcoming mean is? Your body. And what I want to get across is you need to do that too. It's not as simple as say you don't do that, but I want you to know that the sensation of freedom must include more than your mind. It needs to include experiences that emanate from your body to your mind. It's not just a thought. How many times have you been complimented or told that the key to living with disability is a good attitude? Right? Anyone heard that one before? Oh, come on. You see, he smiles all the time. He's so great. He's an inspiration. He's always happy. Right? It's just like, oh, for God's sakes. As if this experience could ever be told by me just having a good attitude. Nice for you to think that. But the inside of living with disability, the struggle that all of us have on a day-to-day basis, that is not dealt with simply with a good attitude. I love that Michael McRae here is just laughing and smiling over there. I love when I see the sharedness. This is what I want our community to watch each other, of when things are said, like how much it resonates. You know what I'm talking about. And I don't get to talk with people that know the things I'm saying at the level that you all know them. So for me, that's why I'm nervous. Like, this actually really matters to me. Of all the groups I present from, and I teach a lot, this one's got me shook up, because there's a part of my experience, even to run mind body solutions, that I've never shared either. that I don't know that it's okay to let it be here and be both sad about it, mad about it, absurd about it, right? It's a crazy freaking cartoon when you watch people. I remember I've had people try to help my wheelchair in the car when I used to lift my wheelchair in and out of the car, right? And I would ask them not to, and they'd do it anyway. And then they'd wedge it in the back of my car and I wouldn't be able to get it out. I've been trapped in my car because I couldn't dissuade someone from helping me for help I didn't want to have, right? And then when you do try to say, hey, I don't need that, they get upset. They feel bad. There are all these stories that you and I, only you and I really know, right? So like Joe Daly, who's on this call somewhere, goes to the grocery store and and, and says, I can't remember the line, like, did you get out today? And he's actually, it's a snowstorm, and he's actually in line to buy at Target or at the grocery store. And they're asking like with marvel, did you get out today? And it's like, wait, no, I'm here, right? It's your idea of what you think my life is that you're asking from. Who says I can't be free? A few months ago, with a bunch of really socially progressive people, and I said that aging was a disability. And they got super offended. And they were all young people, but they didn't want the label of disability to apply to elderly people. And guess what? I want to reclaim the frickin' word. Okay, right? It's an okay word. And Laura in a second is going to talk a little bit about this. But here's one of the many ways I want to reclaim this word. Okay. This is from Kevin Kling. And if you don't know Kevin Kling, I teach body mind story with him. He's a world famous storyteller. He's a playwright. He's an author. He's amazing, right? He's on our YouTube channel with me with a series of interviews. You should watch him. It's called, our YouTube channel is called The Hub. But he's someone that was born with TARS syndrome, so one arm's really deformed. And then 20 years ago, he's like about 55. 20 years ago, he's in a really bad motorcycle accident and completely paralyzed his one good arm. So his bad arm became his good arm. And he's one of the most funny human beings. In fact, if you put in the chat room, you guys do that 2-minute thing from Kevin that was just posted from Almanac, storytelling about the current state of the world we're in. But this is what he says about disability, okay? And I love this. This is part of the reclaiming that I want to do of the word. When Dante went to the underworld, he called it dis, the Latin word for the underworld, the land of shadow and reflection. Dante knew that you can't cure a trauma, whether it's a broken limb, a promise, a person. But although it can't be cured, it can be healed. And Dante knew this. He knew dis was a necessary step to paradise. It's also the prefix for words like disability, which doesn't mean inability. It means able through another way, able through the world of shadow and reflection, a foot in two worlds, dis. So part of the thing I want to share with this group is disability, if we do it right, can and should mean ability that's traveled through the world of shadow and reflection, right? That in fact, our ability is deepened by the experience we've lived. It's not less. It's not something that everyone should be sad about. All of you, including me, have earned our wisdom. Now, what's funny about the sensation of freedom is that our culture, anyone notice that our culture, I don't know about you, but as I've been living with the disability and watching people think that their freedom is being compromised by having to wear a mask, right? First, I just want to laugh and go, oh my God, the convenience that you are confusing with freedom is unbelievable. Like, I can't believe that you actually think that wearing a mask is a individual violation of freedom. But put that aside, right? It also makes me laugh about, think about how much more as we are forced to live our lives, we have to put up with. In fact, our voices, people living with disability, needs to come out to get our people to realize that wearing a mask is not actually an invasion of their sacred sense of individual freedom, right? That it's deeper than that, right? So what I want to do on this note is I want to bring in Laura. So Laura is a student of mine, ours from Ireland, and we a little bit about her. Just so you know, she was featured in our end of the year stuff, and you can read her article that I wrote about after a conversation. So Laura, I'm looking for you. I'm looking at myself, but I'm not seeing Laura yet.
I'm here.
Yeah, I know, but I'd love to see you so I could watch your facial expressions. Is that going to be, there she is. Yay, there's Laura. Okay, now I can see it. So Laura, tell us where we're going to introduce you, tell about your story. Tell us where you live.
Let me tell you where I live. Okay. I
Don't you
live,
love her accent, by the way? Holy crap, I love her accent. Sorry about that, go on.
okay. I know some of you guys, so the others, I'm Laura, who does it right, that I've not met. I live in Ireland, and I came to MBS about
Wait, where in Ireland? Give us the actual details.
I am from County Cork in Ireland. Yeah, so I I came to MBS about 3 years ago now, I guess. And I think for some of the reasons Matthew just covered there, really, which is that it was all going okay, and I decided I was gonna just learn my way out of it.
So, so just a second before you go there, I want to ask you a couple of questions, right? So we talked yesterday on Zoom yesterday. You said something to me about a couple things, like about your relationship to the word disability that really cracked me up. One was about you took your whole lifetime to, remember the phrase here you're talking about, to get used to that word or accept that word?
I mean, I really don't mean to sort of mock people for it, because I stumble into this with other groups of people. I don't know what to say when it comes to race and stuff. Like, I get equally as embarrassed, but it kind of grates me now when people want to take the word disability away. It's like I'm 35 and I spent about 30 years getting comfortable with it, and now they want to change it. I'm like, whoa, hold up here now. I've done a lot of hard work here, okay? Don't take it away from me. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And people are, I don't know why people are uncomfortable with it. I think language is a funny way to make people feel, well, it's important. I'm not saying it's not, but I think sometimes we get a little bit too caught up in it, and it can.
Yeah. The other line you said to me, which is I'm still processing from yesterday, which I really like, is about it as a part of your identity, but one that the culture doesn't want to say to you. Remember you're saying this about this?
Yeah,
I'd like you to say more about that.
for years I spent time saying really stupid things that I don't say anymore. Like, I used to say, I'm not defined by being disabled, which is a stupid thing to say, right? Because I am, right? But the difference is that, and I say that now. I usually define by it in the terms of like the way I'm defined by where I live and my gender and my things in life that are. And I've kind of come to the realization that if I don't define it, somebody else is if I'm not defined by it, somebody else is going to define it for me. So now I tell people that I'm usually defined by it, and that's means that I get to define it. And if I get to define it, it's okay. If I think this kind of like, I'm not defined by it, is like giving it up, and you hand it over to society and let them do whatever they want to do with it. And that's sort of a dangerous thing that I don't do.
Yeah, and one of the things you'd said to me yesterday that also struck me, that line, but also that then people around you are, instead of it being a word of empowerment or part of your identity that you can't escape, you are on some levels in this culture defined by the fact that you're disabled, that then not only that, but then they deny you to have it be a thing of power, right? Yeah. Whereas, like right now, being a part of an indigenous population or being a Native American is a thing of empowerment, as opposed to something that the culture running goes, oh, can I call you the thing that you are, right?
I don't know what happened there. And I think you said an interesting thing to me yesterday about story, which is that, and I think you're right in that I it's become, and I'm not saying by the way that it's not a struggle for other groups, but you know if you look at like LGBTQ or race, it's like it's your identity and you should be very proud of that, and you should be. But they don't think you should be proud of being disabled. They're like, that's really sad. And like, and it's kind of like, no, and it is an identity because you either gain it from, acquire it, or you're born with it. And I don't think it's not something you should think about as part of your identity, but I think it's like people are afraid to kind of congratulate you for it. And
And this is where I get back to like my abilities travel to the world of shadow and reflection. In fact, guess what, culture? You should actually listen more than you do,
mm,
because I'm having experiences that matter, and I don't want to fight you for them. I don't want to yell louder than you. But this is what part I want to get. I want to invite everyone into this group because I want you to the wider range of our culture to get used to like, wait,
yeah,
Laura has earned insight.
right.
You all have earned insight that we should not shy away from, and
Yeah,
we should like claim it differently. So go ahead, Laura.
yeah, and you made that point to me yesterday as well, which is it is earned. You know what I mean? And like I think you said something to me like, it's the ability part you've earned, and it is the ability part you've earned. And I think we sometimes that gets taken away, and I don't know whether that. I think you made a valid point about like maybe it is about not getting as much of our of story out there, or our own voices.
Yeah.
People don't know, and that was kind of something that I had to think about, because I was like, oh, well, maybe that's my job to say to people, well, um, I think there seems to be a different category, and like I was saying to you yesterday, it gets all melded into one category, and I don't think that's correct either. I don't think so. Certain
Yeah.
people are nuanced about
So
disability.
let's talk a little bit about the fact that I was injured when I was 13, so I have a spinal cord injury, but she has a spinal cord condition too, but it's very different. So talk a little bit about what you live with as a
Yeah,
as
so
a situation.
I spina bifida, and I was born with it, and have always had it. Now, you know, in terms of levels of ability, I suppose there's been different variants, but I've always had it. So it's not like so I've had a very different experience in some sense to you or somebody who acquired it, because I didn't lose something in the same way that other people did. Or maybe if you get a condition that you're older, or due to ill health or something. So I think society doesn't really. I understand if you have to advocate for a group of people, you kind of have to put them in one group in order to do
Mhm.
that. But in terms of conversation or discussion, it's not very nuanced about like, because that's a very different experience.
For sure it is. And one of the things is that what I want to ask you about though is that even though you've never known anything different, have you growing up in a culture, have you also gotten the message like I have? Like, so I was running around athletic, and all of a sudden I acquired a disability, and I'm paralyzed from the chest down, and people just felt bad for me, and that's a natural reaction, and that they're trying to express it. But then there's like somehow I've lost freedom, right. And do you think you've gotten messages, even though you've never been able to be anything different, that somehow you can't be free in your situation either?
Oh yeah. I mean, I actually think the messaging is very sort of dangerous in some ways. Like, I don't know if I should use that word, but it's very strong. And I kind of accepted it as a truth when I was young. When you're young, or when you're in your 20s or your teens, you kind of go, okay, that must be true.
Which truth are you talking about? What truth?
Well, I constantly tried to combat the sympathy, when I was young, which led me to sort of making people believe I was more positive than I really was. That I was,
Right.
fake
So
it till
can I unpack that word for a second? Because I think it's a word that we all combat the sympathy,
yeah,
prove that it's not true, right? That they don't need to be
yeah,
people don't need to be. And
Yeah.
yet they actually do, because life's hard with a disability, but you found yourself trying to combat. Like I tried to prove to everyone that I was okay.
I was constantly trying to prove to people I was okay, and not only okay, but like doing really good. Like, I was like, I am crushing it. Like, I am doing it so well. It's unbelievable. And then if I did feel bad about it, I was supposed to hide it. You know what I mean? Like, I thought, because I was like, well, that doesn't go with the positive attitude I'm supposed to have.
And did you also find that when you were having a hard time, that the people that weren't as close to you didn't know what to do with it? Is that part of why you kept it away? Or did you never even get so open as to ever share that it was really hard?
I was really good at it. I was really good. Like, I was incredibly good at hiding it, and only from a very small group of people. And then what happened was, when I went to college, everyone used to say to me, and this is interesting because I really tried for this, and then when it happened, it really pissed me off. I mean, I worked for it. I worked so hard for it. People would go, Laura, I just forget. Like, I forget sometimes. Like, I invited you guys.
Anybody heard that in the audience? I hear that. I've heard that all the time.
And then I was so angry at those people. And then I was like, why are you angry? You basically spent 20 years trying to convince them of that. Why are you cross with them? You never told them that that's what you needed. So why are you angry with them?
So I think that paradox, and I'm talking to the whole group now, of that she both wanted to prove that and then angry at it, is exactly a symptom of the conflict of the cultural societal meme coming into how you're supposed to be relative to who and what you actually are. Right. And so you get even and yet you can't even get pissed at them either, right?
Oh, I was so
Because like, so you're really stuck.
yeah,
You're at cross purposes in your life as a person as a disability with the disability. And that's like one of those signs of like, whoa, my God, I am not living congruently.
yeah.
I'm going to say with my feet.
They organized my graduation party in a restaurant that in no way, shape, or form would I ever be able to get into. And I was invited to that. So deadly serious. Like, he looked me in the eye and he said, Laura, we're gonna go. And I went, okay. And then afterwards I was like, not one like minute of recognition. And I was like, afterwards I was like, you did this to yourself, Laura. Look what you did. Like, I was like, they don't even know. Like, and they've spent 3 years with you. Like, it's
And that feeling of affront at one level, I'm projecting onto you because I think I know this sensation. And I think that people know this sensation, like that you're angry on one level, but part of you on your inner body, you're hurt.
Mhm.
You have this, again, the one outward, which doesn't really change the world as well, but the one where it's like, how did you not see
Yeah.
that this was going on? How did you not know that might really suck?
Mhm.
Right. And yet you're caught with like, and you probably just went to it and sucked it up, right? Or did you not go? Did you boycott?
I wasn't gonna go, and then my housemate uh basically like called up the head of the committee and was like, "That's upstairs," like, and he was like, "Oh my god!" And so we went, and loads of people helped, and then I came in, and he was like, "Oh my god, I'm so sorry, Laura," and I was like, "It's fine. I didn't tell anyone, so why are you sorry?" But it was like I was so mad at myself. I was like, "You did this to yourself," but at the same
Yeah,
time,
but
you're
it's not. And that's what I want to get out is you didn't just do it to yourself.
yeah.
You lived in the culture that you live in. You have your own experience
Yeah.
and you're trying to navigate. And
Yeah,
it's a both and.
this weird dichotomy by being proud of it. Like, I achieved something. Like, it's great that they don't notice.
Yeah. And
And
and the thing is
also,
I have a hard time advocating for stuff like that. Like I don't want to draw the attention to it. I'm more,
that was basically
like all this stuff. I mean, and I'm sure some of you out there are feeling the same way. So one of the things that as we start to move a little bit more towards some of the yoga and stuff, but I want to talk to you about that you started out in the beginning and I stopped you, was that you kind of thought that if you just moved to your head, because one of the things we get kind of moved to is if you has anyone ever had the importance of acceptance projected at you from every direction that you can imagine, including from underneath your seat, right? When you're just psychologically thinking about a disability, the word acceptance is like the big deal. So it happened to me like I was telling people I could feel at the doctors and waking, like I could feel things in my legs, but they were worried I wasn't going to accept my condition. So they told me it wasn't real. And what they ended up doing was throwing out a whole bunch of my experience. In fact, they were throwing out a whole bunch of levels of my experience, which are essential for the sensation of freedom. Right. And so like you're constantly in this kind of back and forth about like what is it that I'm actually experiencing and how does it fit into the world. And so when you had said, Laurie, you kind of told me various times, and it's in that piece that I wrote about our conversation, was about I want to say this the right way, like mm, there's so many threads here, about that you could, I want to say this right, like that if you just could go to your head, your life would be more free.
Mm.
Or that you could learn your way through, that's how you said it, learn your way through a disability or intellectualize it. So talk a little bit about that as a strategy.
I really decided somewhere around 13 or 14 that was the way out, and that was the way to fit in. That if I just lived there and forgot about the rest of it, I'd be all right. And also, it sort of went along with the medical model of like forget the bits that don't work and don't live in the parts that don't work and concentrate on what does work. And they still say you're a bright girl, Laura. And I'll be like, okay, I don't know what that means, but okay. And I just thought, all right, well, I'm supposed to study and do well in school, and that's the only avenue that I have. And so I did that for a while, but I got incredibly anxious and incredibly yeah, just incredibly depressed doing that because I was trying to cut stuff off for a long time, and it doesn't really work. I mean, it works for a while, but you just
And
end
it
up.
works in certain aspects of your life. So there are a lot of places where you have to go to your head and accept a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, it works. It's good for certain things, and it's good for like, if you're going through something traumatic, like it helps to sort of go, okay, I can get through this, but like if you do that all the time, it's like, I don't know what I imagined, like, I don't know, sort of like thinking about it was just like trying to live in one area all the time, and I ended up feeling very claustrophobic in my own body because I wasn't really living in all of it. It was like I was taking up very little space of it, and it just, and like I was the opposite of free out of it. I was like, I don't know what to do now. I've kind of made myself small to fit in this place.
And I actually think that as you people are listening can hear, that's not just an issue with disability either,
Mm.
right? Like this is something you see in the behavior of people living with eating disorders. This
Yeah.
is a behavior you see sometimes in people who have survived trauma,
Yeah.
right? That there's a tendency to make yourself shrink and get small as a way to take up less space, as a way to control things,
Yeah,
right?
and I think,
Yeah, go
as I
ahead.
was saying to you yesterday as well, like, you know, I'll always remember when I came to MS and you said that thing about like, you don't ever get like a vacation from it. And I think that,
With the disability, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and I that really kind of stayed with me because I think the deal I was trying to strike with, myself was like, I'll just take 6 hours away and go to school and not live in it so people don't really notice, so then I'll come home and I'll go back to being disabled, but for the 6 hours I'm there, I'll just pretend that I'm not and try and hang out with these people. And it just it doesn't really work. It works for to an extent, but it didn't make me very happy.
Yeah, and you start to have some anxiety and some other issues that start to come from that, because here's the mind body truth. Mind that gets disconnected from body will lead naturally to anxiety,
Yeah.
right? Because the mind will judge what's been vacated and will get overwhelmed by what's not there, because that's what mind gets aware of. It's more, it's, we say this in our trainings, is that unfortunately our minds are the last of the party, and they actually learn more when they lose things as to when they gain things. Right? We tend to habituate relief. We tend to habituate when things feel good. We don't pay attention to them because our minds are looking for the threat or what's not, right? And so when it comes to the body, right, when the mind gets disconnected from the body, its main frame of reference will be judgment, ungrounded judgment,
Right.
right? Ungrounded judgment will lead to suffering. That's what it does. Laura, you want to pop in there? Did you say something there, Laura?
No, no, I was just saying I've never heard you say that before.
Yeah. And so part of what as we switch to more to like a yoga practice now, right? That the sensation of freedom, when I say the sensation of freedom needs to travel from body to mind, I mean literally. The sense of spaciousness, the mind doesn't have enough reference in order to allow in the freedom of spaciousness. Okay, the relief of space, because the mind's constantly doing this to it. It's trying to like get it down and controllable, make yourself smaller. So what I want to start, and what we try to achieve in our yoga classes online, which we want all of you to come to, right, more regularly, is that how does the sensation of freedom travel from inside to out, right? To me, like this group coming together and starting to talk about issues like this is also an example of becoming more free, being able to expand and connect about some of your inner experiences that don't just have to be emotional, right? They're these other things that we're living, that's part of the expansion of disability into the world, right? And so in closing up this part of it, then we're going to take a few questions, Laura. So how was it when, how open were you actually to me wanting to draw attention to your feet when you first came to the training?
Um, I was. It was very interesting because, like, everything in my body was going, don't do it. But
In your body or your mind?
well, like, because everything in the fear of like not going, I suppose, yeah, not going into the body was like, don't go there. And then because I thought I was gonna feel sad and grief when I went in there. That was my association with it. I was like, I'm gonna feel really sad about the things that don't work and the bits. And actually, it wasn't like that at all. I felt an enormous amount of relief once I started to hang out there for a while. Um,
Right.
so that was interesting to me. I was like, because I thought, well, I'm gonna have to face that this bit doesn't work the way I wanted. It's not gonna be good. But it didn't. It wasn't like that at all. It was actually almost like a release of pressure in some ways.
Yeah, and part of it is that, in this group, in these workshops that go forward, you're not going to get a lot of sympathy for what you're living through here. I mean, because guess what? We're bombarded in the one that doesn't know what it is, right? And one of the things that we try to get across, and not that we want everyone to emote in classes, is that when you're with people authentically with what you are, not you think who you should be, right? That when you're with a group that allows you to be what you are,
Yeah,
right, you end up realizing there's freedom on the other side of grief.
yeah,
That all the things you've been sacrificing in order to keep up with the pace of the outside world was actually eliminating some of your freedom. And the freedom of the places you've abandoned. There's freedom in the places you've abandoned. And guess what? Can you tell this doesn't just apply to disability right now? It applies to being a human being. Is that there's freedom in the places you've abandoned. And if you're able to like use the body as a vehicle, the process of embodiment to reclaim spaces you let go. I want to reiterate, who says I can't be free, right? If I'm authentically what I am, not who the culture wants me, not who I think I need to be, but if I let it come what I am, at least in some contexts in my life, which I hope this series of workshops is a place for you to come to do that, all of you, it's like, I'm telling you, things start to move and the experience of disability starts to transform, and it comes from body to mind. Does anyone have any questions actually for Laura before we do the last half hour of a yoga practice? Because I want to go on for hours now. I'm past my nervousness and now I'm ready to just go forever, right? So is anyone raising their hand? Mind Body Solutions team, are you watching the screens? Anyone got a question or a comment?
Yeah, this is Amy. We're looking through the screens right now, so hold tight.
Right.
Again, folks, if you are interested, please put it in the chat box or raise your hand on your screen, and Bethany and I are kind of scanning through right now.
As we're doing that, I want to say something else. Like in the conversation with Laura yesterday, she said something to me that struck me as really a thing that I might want to throw up a discussion group about this in a month or so, where we get back together. And this is how we want this group to function interactively, is that she goes, God, what's really bugging me is within the pandemic, how much fear there is around about disability as an underlying condition, to be actually lumped in constantly and bombarded with your vulnerability and how to deal with that in relationship. And it's true, like a lot of us have more medical conditions, that's also true. But like what it is to live under that category and be lumped into that category. So I would like it, if you have suggestions on things that we can talk about and do going forward, please send them to us at amy@mindbodysolutions.org. Like, because this is one, I think within a month, I want to just have a group, right? So Lori Delahunt has a raised hand, is what's coming on my screen. So
just had to unmute there. So what I'm wondering, Laura, is I know you've spent some time in the US, I don't know how much, but do you notice any difference between reactions to you in the US versus at home in Ireland, or differences in facilities, anything significant between the two countries?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a good question. So now I just want to protect my culture here by saying this is a generalization, but this is not everybody. If you are disabled in Ireland, I was laughing at Matthew talking about putting his wheelchair in his car, because that's happened to me loads of times. But Irish people will go, sorry, I just want to tell you, I know you're probably fine. You're absolutely fine. You don't need help. I know you don't need help, but I just wonder if you do need help. And also, I know you don't need help and you're fine. And you look like you're doing great and it's fine. But like, if you do need help, I'm here. And you're like, okay, thanks for that. Americans will just be like, do you need some help there? And I'll be like, no, it's fine. Irish people are constantly apologizing because they don't want you to think.
So some of the sound's screwing up. I'm not sure what's going on.
I was like, so I noticed that they're much like Americans are more direct about like, are you okay there? Do you need? Whereas Irish people will hang back and they'll look for a while and they'll be like, I'm really sorry, and you're like, okay.
One of my limited things of one of the times I've been to London is that because the culture is older and the buildings are older, there's a lot more impediment, it's not as accessible physically. So I find there to be an overcompensation in when I've been in London, trying to make it all better, trying to, because they know, and it's not their fault. I mean, history is history, right? And I wouldn't want them to knock down a 1,200-year-old building in order to make it accessible. So I do think I would agree that I find that extra hovering to be more prevalent in England.
Yeah.
Matt, this is Amy.
Okay.
We've got a question from Carla to the group. She's asking, Laura, can you say more about the anxiety/depression when you were younger?
Okay. It's sort of materialized as anxiety attacks in my sort of early 20s, and I didn't really know why. I started going to college, and I wasn't very good at taking a lot of help from people, so I bit off a lot more than I could chew, and kind of set up stuff for myself, that I wasn't able to manage without asking for help. So it led to an awful lot of anxiety and having to over plan everywhere I went, and get very stressed out about the places I had to go. So it for me it really kind of materialized as anxiety, and then the sort of depression of it was that I felt like, well, now you've failed because you didn't manage it, and you had to cancel this, and you didn't have the energy to do this, and I sort of set up stuff for myself that was not manageable on my own. So that was the way it kind of did it for me, and it was kind of a vicious circle there that I had to sort of say, okay, I gotta break this up.
So Carla, in response to that question too, if you read the article that I wrote or the piece I wrote on Laura as a kid growing up, even younger, she was really lucky. She had a really supportive family and had outlets outside of school, but the school experience was particularly hard, right, Laura?
Yes.
In trying to navigate. So from what I got from our interview, or from that conversation, was that the school was the heightened place of anxiety and fitting in with your peers more than the life, and you were a lucky one, had really good stuff and support around it.
Yeah, I think that, interestingly, no, you're right. But I think I had learned to sort of manage that in school, and there wasn't an awful lot of facilities, and that was a time thing as well, of like my age, and it kind of came after when I left school. But then when I went to university, the help was there. I just didn't know how to take it because it hadn't been offered to me for my whole younger years. So it was offered to me, and I was like, no, I'll be fine. And they had to sort of really like pin me down a couple of times and be like, you should take this. Like, you really need some
And I
help.
remember in the conversation you said you had a depression like when you were a junior in high school.
Yeah.
And it was because you realized that you had done such a good job. Say more about this, but you'd done such a good job pretending you were fine, and then realizing that you're gonna have to pretend the rest of your life.
Yeah.
That's what I got out of it. Is that right? Is
Yeah.
it? Say more about that.
I don't know how many people here like have acquired a disability or have not, or you're born with one, but I don't know. Like, I think this is an assumption for people who acquire a disability, but for me, I think it's because your brain is not, when you're younger, you don't really think about it. Like when you're young, you're disabled, and it's like, this is it. But when you're older, because I guess because your brain is maturing and all that, you suddenly realize that this is for life. And like, I was working really hard and to pretend. And I think somewhere around 17, I suddenly went, oh crap, I've got to do this forever. Like, there's no reprieve from this. I've got to keep this act up for the rest of my life. And I'm exhausted. Like, how am I going to do this? And like, there's no Academy Award for this performance. Nobody gives you anything. You just have to keep going. Like, it's very method, and nobody congratulates you for how well you did it. You just kind of go, oh crap. So I suddenly realized, like, this, I don't think I can keep this up. Like, I'll have to start saying I can't manage things. And that was like the worst form of failure for me. I was like, if I have to say I can't do it, but like, that was because of I have a really positive attitude and I can do it and I'm great. And that took me a long time to learn to say, no, this is challenging for me.
Yep.
And yeah.
All right, so we're gonna start doing it. Oh, there's another comment quick. Joe made a comment who's traveled to
Yeah.
Ireland. I was impressed by I was impressed how people were aware that things weren't accessible, but tried very hard to be accommodating. That's part of what I experienced too. Here's a question, and then we gotta do some yoga, for God's sakes. I am a yoga teacher, for God's sakes. Laura, how did you first get connected with mind body solutions? Yeah, especially being from Ireland, and we meant to tell that story. You need to tell that story. And could you describe one or two takeaways from your teachings? Forgive me if this is also in the interview. Happy to read it. No, say something. What happened? You all of a sudden decided something, right?
Yeah, I was looking for something. I didn't know what exactly that was, and because I knew something was wrong in my body. Like, I knew I was disassociating an awful lot, and there was a lot of anxiety, and so I was trying to find something that would help. Um, and I listened to a podcast one day on being, Krista Tippett, which if anyone hasn't listened to, is a really good podcast. And Matthew was on it. And Matthew was basically saying, like, you know, the way in the medical model they told you don't live in that part of your body. Well, that doesn't work. You've got to, like, funnily enough, you have to live in your whole body in order to be, you know, to find that level of comfort. And I still think, wow, because nobody had ever said that to me in my entire life. And I was like, oh my God. So my mother is actually a yoga teacher. So I had done yoga in the traditional form for many years, but adaptive yoga is not really a thing in Ireland. It's not really done. So I just sort of came out of my room one day and said, I think I'm just going to go to America and go on the course. I had never done a yoga training in my entire life, so people thought it was absolutely crazy. I had gone to yoga classes with even my mother was kind of like, do you think this might be a little bit too much for you, Laura? And I was like, no, I think it's going to be great. So I decided I was going to go. So yeah, I bought a ticket, and this is 3 years later.
Came over to get teased a lot by me, actually.
I just signed up for all this abuse.
And that's part of, just so you know too, part of what's best about our training is when people come for other yoga teachers, and people with living with disabilities are coming for the training, but also, you know, a lot of the people on this call have been part of our trainings. That's what really teaches the wider community, is when they actually share their voices. And, you know, like one of the workshops coming forward is going to be finding your voice in relationship to this culture, right? Yeah. So we're going to continue these themes. All right, it's 3:06. We got to do a little bit of yoga, right? A little bit of
to say that if there was any questions anyone had, they, like, Bethany or Amy can, like, pass them on to me, and I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, and you know, you'll be seeing her again. I told Laura early on when she came in the first week that my plan was to exploit her over the rest of the history of Mind Body Solutions, and so this is one of the first steps.
Section I come back for, because obviously, yeah. There we go.
So it's just one of these things. You'll be seeing more, and please ask questions. And I want more of you to come forward and be willing to share stuff. And this is part of what especially with the online being so accessible now, that I want to go and bring out into the world more and more for a wider and wider audience. All right. So the sensation of freedom in the last 20 minutes, you know, the idea that there is an inside. So the cultural meme continually, in my opinion, asks us to go, you know, think about what's more on the outside, what I'm supposed to do out here, right? And especially when you're younger, it's harder to know that there even is a valid inside, right? But as I teach, you know, I teach able-bodied people and adaptive students, traditional students and non-traditional students. I call them because I'm trying to get the words right. And I'm amazed at the issues are relatively the same, that people aren't very good at going into their body and recognizing that the emptiness that their mind actually is afraid of and judges is actually the key to the strongest part of you. Your resilience is in your emptiness more, right? It's in the quieter part of you. But the quieter part of you, and not just the part that comes in meditation, amplifies sensation, right? And so the ability to move from acknowledging not just psychologically that you have an interior life, right? But rather that you have an interior, a midline of your body where a lot of your resilience is. And I don't mean metaphorically. So sit up straight and tall. The idea that you can already move in multiple directions. So say you can't put your feet down flat, that's okay. Like one of the things that we try to teach is that in every single yoga pose, you have to go down to go up, right? Now this is true no matter what body you have, right? No matter what body. And the idea that I can start engaging in multiple directions is one of the true gifts of being alive, right? So feel your feet on the floor, and everyone gets all caught up in calming the mind down. I want the mind to actually recognize that it's second to the party. It's not in charge all the time. And already that's a level of freedom, right? And so hit down with your sitting bones and to whatever extent you can, right? And then rise up through. And the fact that you can broaden and take up space, right? Right, so down, up, and broaden, right? And feel your feet on the floor and stretch out to the top of your head. Fill the vessel. And then in order to truly learn the importance of this, empty the vessel. Drop your chest, right? Inward to outward embodiment is the source of true freedom. Okay, so hit down again, learn to fill the vessel, right? Like expand and open. So this like movement, I've never seen somebody, I've taught people with very serious brain injuries that barely have an active mind, but I've never taught anyone that doesn't have a spine, right? What if your spine was actually the center of your life force and that this just organizes it? Right? And your body is there waiting for you, right? My mind can't tell my toes to wiggle, right? But they're waiting there and they've been there the whole time. When you start to realize that your body will never leave you, your body will always stay faithful to living. Always. My body didn't ask for what happened. Laura's body didn't ask for spina bifida, but it's making the best of it. And it's way more faithful to living than your mind, right? These are the foundations of freedom, right? Not whether I can stand up. So again, down, up. And the fact that some of you may be able to coordinate your breath and inhalation with the expansion. Some of you shouldn't pay attention to that because that coordination is kind of hard. And then feel the filling vessel. And then on the exhalation, let it empty and stay full at the same time. So here's one of the core sensations I would say is at the core of freedom: emptiness and fullness simultaneously, right? This culture that has so much attachment and lives so outside to feel content and full, like their life is full, they're missing something profound, which is the goal is simultaneous inward to out sensation. So again, feel your feet on the floor, feel your sitting bones, and you actually get to do little things to amplify sensations. So for those of you that can, bring your hands on your knees and push back with your knees onto your knees and feel. And those of you that can't do this, maybe you have someone in your house to do it later, to do this for you, push it on your knees and feel your chest lift. And then release. And then do it again, and this time coordinate it if you can on an inhalation. And feel the rise and the fullness. Take a breath. And then exhale and release. You get to live to the outer edges of whatever body you have. And muscular action is not the only way to experience that. Right? So I want you to notice also something. Obviously, the inhalation actually is an expansion and fills the vessel. Think about the inhalation as taking in nourishment from the universe, right? And the exhalation as the opportunity for action. Okay, instead of it just being a withdrawal, an emptying. So this time, take the inhalation, feel the vessel, and then exhale and move forward. And as you change the weight on your feet, watch how the awareness will move through your body. Right? I'm thinking about Sammy right now, a student with high-level quadriplegia. She can get all this even without being able to move. The freedom exists not just in her imagination. Now, everyone, push off with your feet. Keep lit in the center of the sternum and come back up. Fill the vessel again. Emptiness to fullness. Fullness to emptiness and into action. Exhale and come forward. Inhale, use the expansion of your breath to come back up. Exhale, lengthen your spine. I'm going to tell you that movement from inside to out is the source of freedom, right? Another little thing that I see over the years, especially for people that are more sedentary, i.e. in wheelchairs, but people that are sitting a lot, is that they don't have a sense of playfulness anymore. So a lot of times you'll see in when I'm in new groups, I'll say, hey, when's the last time you shook your butt? Right? I'll have to make it a joke. Right? Shake your butt a little bit, get it lighter. Guess what? If your low back is constantly compressing, you lose a sense of space and fullness through your whole body, right? So when I'm asking you to lift up a little, even if you can't lift up all the way, but to get a sense of expansion in your lower abdomen and a sense of hanging, can you feel that as space? Now jiggle a little bit with that. Figure out how to move with a sense of space, right? As opposed to just grinding your way through your life. The integration of empty space and action is actually what freedom is, right? It's not just being able to do and achieve. Because we've heard this story a million times. The type A person that's only trying to achieve, right? And who doesn't take the pause and the space to feel what they've accomplished, because their whole sense of adequacy and purposefulness is on the accomplishment as opposed to on the process, right? That's the loss of freedom, right? And so you can practice this in asana, all right? So again, I'm gonna and that playfulness, I remember one of the sad things that I see sometimes in people in wheelchairs is when they try to dance with their wheelchair, right? Which is fine, there's nothing wrong with that. Except guess what? Don't just dance with your wheelchair. You're separate from your wheelchair too. Sometimes I want to merge with my wheelchair. Sometimes I want to only live on my wheelchair. And a lot of times I want to be out of my wheelchair. I want to live in more spaces, right? And it doesn't mean I have to go horseback riding or downhill skiing, which is all great. And I see a lot of students that are really good adaptive students that are really good athletes, but they're not free in their bodies. They haven't been told to stay in the body they have and do both, go downhill skiing and figure out how to be from inside to out. So when you go, lean over to the left, then open up here, right? Like this space. Guess where a whole bunch of connection to the world comes from? Not by me trying to keep up with the damn world, but by me letting this part of me be in space. So open this up, take your arm up. I'm gonna go to the outer edges of my body. As I go and realize that my freedom, if I'm just constrained by my body, right, I can only go to the edge of my fingertips. If I hit down, as my left arm's up in the air, if I hit down through my right sitting bone and my right foot and take my left shoulder blade back towards my midline and I extend I can feel like I'm touching the sky. And breathe, and then go the other way. Do you actually think that yoga poses are end at the terminus of your body? Oh no, they don't. You get to be in more space than just your body. So I'm making sure this goes open. And as this goes open, I'm watching the space it creates in my body. And then my arm goes up. And then I hit down through my right sitting bone, my right foot as I'm leaning over, take the shoulder blade in towards my body, straighten my arm, extend out to the top of my head, lift my chest. It seems like a lot, doesn't it? Except just feel it. Find what integrity feels like. Fullness feels like. Take a breath. Good, and then come on up. There are spaces, anyone that knows has a lot of chronic pain, like a lot of us live with, it can make you feel a loss of freedom, right? One of the really important things is with chronic pain is to be able to have space in your body in addition to the sensation of pain. So you get to surround it, right? And even so, some days, like I'm looking at you, Rodrigo, I know some days it just freaking hurts and you need to take a nap. That's freedom. The freedom is not to think that your only success comes from pushing. It doesn't. It comes from mastering the experience you have, right? Which means obeying when you need rest, right? But this idea of space between in your low spine, right? So you lift up a little bit again, hit down through your sitting bones, feel that sense of space, set yourself back down, keep your chest lifted. Now come forward if you can, and really get better at stretching your low back. But don't just think about it as stretching. So I'm lengthening and hitting down through my sitting bones. Okay, if I just focus on hitting my sitting bones and stretch out the top of my head, that's one thing. But look at the sense of space that changes when you lean forward, hit back with your sitting bones, lift with your chest, and push through your heels. The experience deepens. Freedom. Freedom. I belong here. I occupy space in the body I already have. And then back to center, right? This core thing we're working through in the little bit of time we have now, right? This is the foundation. I can't tell you how hard it is to teach that to traditional students. I want to say this in all earnesty. Teaching really flexible young people yoga is actually kind of a bummer. They don't get the inside of the poses. They don't get that there is no freedom until you transcend constraint. You don't overcome constraint. You transcend it. Transcendence is not overcoming. So if you have a constraint, it's not running through the wall of your constraint. It's actually realizing how there's, let's say metaphorically, the constraint of whatever body you're living in is like a wall. It's the freedom doesn't come from running through the wall and busting it down. That's violence. The freedom comes from living on both sides of the wall, to realize both the inside and the outside while breathing and while moving, right? So a lot of times you'll see in my teaching, everyone, inhale, take your arms up. I'll ask you to do things like feel the space underneath your arms, right? Feel the space on each side of your neck. Connect that sense of space to your sitting bones, to your feet. Be more than just where your body is and breathe, right? Stay in your body. So if you want to expand, take your arms down. If you want to expand beyond your limbs energetically, you have to move towards your midline, right? If I let the limit of my yoga poses be where my body ends, I haven't realized the other side of the wall. Now, this wall, the other side of the wall, I may not be able to see it, but I can feel it. I can feel things simultaneously, right? And so the idea is like moving towards the midline. So this happens in every single yoga pose, is that like, even in like, if I were to have each of you, and I'm not going to take the time to do, have a block between your knees and squeeze the block, your chest would lift. Because when you connect to the midline, an expansion occurs, right? And I can't tell you how hard that is to teach traditional students. They don't get it. They have been having their bodies flop open into spaces like without having to earn them. You have to earn everything. And guess what that's going to reshape you into? A more free person. You're going to be able to see the having and the not having. I can't believe this culture. So many people in this culture are taking a mask as a real core violation of freedom. Oh my God, where have they been? Why don't they realize that that is not how you get constrained? The constraint itself, the freedom comes in that with that you get to be in space. Our economy doesn't shut down, right? Our economic stuff does continue exactly because you're wearing a mask. Actually, the mask is freedom. It's not constraint. But they're not seeing the other side of the wall. They're actually not realizing that the constraint is required for the realization of freedom. And what this can be, and I'm sorry to talk about masks, but as you know, as we're vulnerable with conditions, right? Like when we don't have a collective approach to the virus that shall not be named, we're all at risk. We all lose freedom, like we're losing again. Laura told me that Ireland is like the hottest hotbed of COVID right now. So she's in a bigger lockdown right now, exactly because we can't figure this out. We can't figure out what truly and actually constrains our freedom and how to transform the constraint into the realization. And all this happens. I can teach this and share this better with you because you know constraint, because you know what it is to earn something as simple as movement, as a full life, right? I don't want you to lose your voice. I look at this culture and I think, oh my God, we need your voices more than ever. Your family needs to like take lessons of patience from you. It's amazing how people are confusing inconvenience with a violation of freedom. They're not the same. They're not the same. Okay, so we're coming to the end of the time. Can you tell I could just rave for a while and teach more yoga, right? But I want to do a twist. You know why? Because twists make me feel more alive, right? Take your left arm outside your right arm, and I know it does you too. Find where the other hand should be. Don't try to prove like, oh, I don't want to take any help. Take some freaking help. Use your arm on the chair. Hit down, rise up. Inhale. Expand the chest. Exhale, revolve. Feel the power of grounding, the expansion of the turn. Lift the chest just slightly. Be in your whole body. It's your body. It has an inside, and your brain can hear the inside. You've just maybe been focusing more on the outside. And then come on back to center. Feel the center. And then go the other way. Find where you need to be. Find what it is like. more grounded and more yogic for you. Lift under the collarbones. Expand. When you lift your chest, you're actually moving into the space around you. As you ground your sitting bones and lift your chest, it really moves into the space around you. Then you get to breathe with the whole room. Inhale, exhale, revolve. Lift under the collarbones, spread as you go towards the midline. Freedom. Soften your jaw, soften the inside of your mouth, and work. Figure out where the spaces actually are. Good, and then come on back to center. That's what you're learning in the yoga practice. You're learning where the freedom is near the hub of the wheel, right? And you're not confusing that earning with what you achieve only on the outer world that the world sees. But it's tricky. How do you not take in all the memes? How do you rewrite your history? And by the way, for us that are older, man, I'm 55, right? I'm still rewriting my history. That's what I'm gonna keep doing. I've taken in messages I don't even know, and I'm still working them through, right? This job doesn't stop. Thank goodness. Thank goodness there is always the effort. Thank goodness that the work is the privilege. The work, the earning is the privilege. It's from the Bhagavad Gita, not what you get from it. This is something you and I have to earn more parts of our lives. That's part of the freedom. That's actually, and guess what? Our culture doesn't know it. They've lost it. We got to find voices. All right, we're going to end in Shavasana, of course, because being able to, although I'm kind of riled up, can you tell? I'm a little riled here. It's okay. I'm a little riled. So I'm going to land because I want to, one of my favorite stories is of B.K. Iyengar. His home was right next to the studio. And some senior students were walking by and he was watching, what's the show? The Honeymooners. He was watching The Honeymooners on his TV and he was laying in a god-awful position. So out of alignment, so just laying there like a big pile of pluff on the ground. And the students later in the class asked him, "Sir, I walked by and you're so out of alignment. You are just so ridiculously out of alignment. How is that yogic?" And his response was, "You need all the spaces. You think it's only about towing the line? You think it's only about keeping yourself in perfect alignment? Guess what? No, it's about being in all the spaces. Freedom." All right. So so I want to go inward now. I want to be able to stop on a dime. So I'm going to allow, soften around the temples, the forehead, the jaw, the inside of the mouth. I'm going to lightly, because I can, I'm going to let my fingertips touch. Well, actually, no, I'm putting one hand on top of the other because that feels good to me today. But my thumbs are touching. But I want to let the chair hold me up. One way to practice freedom is to practice receiving from your chair, from the space around you. I don't always have to win. I have to feel, not just with my mind, but with my body. Freedom. Emptiness, fullness in Shavasana, fullness without effort, freedom. Even let go of your teeth and your gums. Relax your belly to relax your throat. Freedom. Feel your breath, don't change it. Thank your body. Gratitude is a sensation. It creates freedom from constraint. It doesn't overcome the constraint. When you're ready, open your eyes. Take the outside of your lips up towards your ears. That'd be smile, right? There's a secret, and you know it. You know it for sure. Make sure that if you have ideas for what we might do in other times, that you write them into us. Please invite more people. I would like these events to be even more worldwide, right? And give us feedback. I mean, at first I thought Laura and I were only going to talk for 15 minutes when I was planning this. And then after talking to her yesterday, I planned for a half hour, and then it turned into an hour, right? Let us know if you found that valuable, the conversation. Let's build the experience together. Let's figure out how to share, all right? Hands together, if you can. Otherwise, center of the chest, lifted and open, right? Namaste. Spirit in me bows the spirit in you, and thanks for the inaugural step into a much bigger world for Mind Body Solutions, right? This is close to my heart. I hope you can tell. All right, everybody. Be well, be happy, be safe, and it's okay to be a little bit irreverent. Who says I can't be free? Right? All right. Take care.